Welcome to the Master Your Millions podcast, the show all about your financial potential and leaving a legacy for future generations. Here are your hosts, Jason and Scott Henderson.
Which I guess is that's my big accomplishment as a business owner to still be in business after 3 decades. So I'm proud of that, and I've been working with all kinds of different businesses over my career to help them to protect their products and protect their brands. And just hitting a little bit on what you were saying there. So first of all, um, a lot of times patents are um, a protection for a specific area in a field. So you mentioned that you had some chemical related patents. So typically when a company finds that there's an innovation with regard to, let's say, a chemical composition, they investigate what else exists previously, and then from there they decide whether there's something unique, something distinguishable from what's been invented before that's worthy of protection. And then typically a patent application is drafted to really encompass what that improvement or that innovation is, which a lot of times is kind of as you describe it. It's like only a little piece or a little niche of a certain field. And just something else to be said about that is that an invention can sometimes be a very small piece in a field, but it could also sometimes be a very big piece. And the difference is whether whether the concept is unique or not. So you could protect an overall concept if that concept is unique. But most of the time, when someone has an invention, perhaps there are other things out there that exist that are closer to it than they even imagine existed. So then we're looking at, well, okay, if those things exist, now what is different about ours? And that's what the patent gets focused on. So, I mean, that's an interesting thing that most people don't realize about patents, is that sometimes they're broad and cover a whole new category, and sometimes they're very specific and cover just the details. And the difference is how innovative what you have is to begin with.
So that's, there's process patents, there's different types of patents, but you said talk about protecting your brand. Can you protect a brand with a patent?
Actually, protect a brand with a trademark. So trademarks protect branding of all types. It could be the name of a business, it could be a logo, it could be a slogan. So, like you think of a very common example like Nike, it's the name Nike, it's the swoosh symbol that they use, and it's the phrase "just do it." Those are all trademarks of Nike because those are items that if you were to see, let's say, the swoosh on a box that didn't have any name on it at all, you would assume it was Nike. And if you were to see the phrase "just do it" on a box without a logo and without a name, you would still think it was Nike. So those are the type of things that when people see them, they think this must be a product from this particular company, in this case Nike. And then those branding elements are all protectable by trademarks. So that's how you protect um, those types of kind of pieces of branding. And for small businesses, generally the starting point is the name of the business or the name of the products. That's the most important thing to protect to prevent your competitors from trying to trick your customers into thinking that they're doing business with you when they're actually buying their product. So that's what trademarks are all about.
So it seems like to me that would be more prevalent or maybe even more applicable to most small
Yeah.
businesses is the trademarking. Uh, what's the difference between a trademark? Because you can see TM and then you
Mhm.
can see an R with a circle around it. What's the
Yeah.
difference between those two?
Well, TM is it's just stating that common law trademark. Essentially, it's not a registered trademark. It's just the owner asserting, "Hey, this is a name that I'm using to distinguish my business." Um, And so it's putting other people on notice to your claim that this is a distinguishing point for your business. The R with a circle around it is for registered trademark. That's when you go through the process, file a trademark application in the United States Patent and Trademark Office, and once it's approved and registered, then you could use that R with the circle around it. So I guess the bottom line is that if you've got a product name that's distinctive, go ahead and put the TM on all of your marketing materials, on your product packaging, etc. Um, but once you obtain a registered trademark, you can put the R with a circle around it.
And what is the process to get the, because seems like to me from what you're saying, registered really is protection, it's legal protection. The other was be careful.
Well, yeah, it's common law protection, which only goes as far as you could prove. So it kind of works like this. It's like if let's say you have a restaurant by a very prominent name or something that's well recognized in a certain city, um, and you've never registered a trademark. If, let's say, someone else opens a restaurant with the same name a few blocks away, people would naturally assume that it's affiliated. That's because you have common law trademark rights, meaning that the public knows of your brand to an extent. And so the extent that you could prove that people would likely be confused with that new restaurant opening up, you can take action. You could take action in court. You can stop them based upon your common law trademark rights. But that's only because you could easily prove the prominence of your business. If a restaurant of the same name opened maybe 100 miles away, it wouldn't be so easy for you to prove that the people in that town know of your brand 100 miles away in the city where you're located in order to establish that there would be likelihood of confusion. So when you register the trademark, you kind of short circuit all of that because it's presumed that your brand is protectable and that there would be confusion throughout the United States. And so essentially, that's the benefit of having the registered trademark is you don't have to prove the prominence of your brand. Um, but now, as far as the process, is it involves applying for the trademark, and you file a trademark application for a certain mark, and that mark can be the name of the business, the name of a product, it could be a slogan, it could be a logo, whatever that element is. You apply for that mark, but in association with a certain type of product or service. So you might have that name for restaurants, or you might have that name and you're applying for it in conjunction with auto supplies. Um, but trademarks don't exist in a vacuum. You always apply for them in association with a certain type of product or service. So that's what the trademark application involves. What is the mark? What is the type of product or service that you're applying for? And that's going to, once filed, that's going to get in line to be reviewed by an examiner. And usually somewhere around 10 months down the road, they'll get to review it. And if they approve it, then it will move to registration. You need to show that you're actually using the mark to complete the registration process. Um, and um, and then after that, there's kind of renewals and other things that need to take place, like 5 years and 10 years down the road.
Well,
Um,
let's talk for a minute monetary.
mhm.
Why is it that someone would want, I mean, what's the top, would you say the top three reasons why someone would want to trademark or get a registered trademark, a brand or something? And how does that translate? So what people are out there say, oh yeah, I want to protect my name, I want to do this. Yet, and they hear, well, you've got to go to the attorney, you've got to go to the patent office, you got to do this, you got to renewal, fees is what they may be thinking, right? There's a lot of outlay. What is the return on my investment? Why is that so important? And how does that help my bottom line?
Yeah, exactly, and that's and that thinking is a little bit of a diversion from where it ought to be, right? I mean,
Then
there's a
correct
lot.
me. Tell me what it should be.
Exactly. But I'm saying that's the common thinking, right? And that's just how people think about it. But there's a little bit of a shift that really would help someone to better understand like where the value is. And that is like most of the time when people are making decisions about should I pursue this IP, they're thinking in terms of the bottom line. And the bottom line is what? Profit. I'm sorry, it's like revenue minus expenses is like profit. Like that's the bottom line. While you're operating your business, like is this going to help me? So if if I'm looking to get a trademark, I'd often be thinking like, well, okay, if I spend a few $1,000s on this trademark, um, is it going to save me $3,000 next year? That's the typical thinking about it. But really, the value, the ROI comes at exit because that's when it's kind of like imagine you spend $10,000 on a bunch of different trademarks for your business. And based upon kind of the profitability and a multiple and other ways in which businesses are typically valued, you're looking at a $5 million exit. Um, if you own the trademarks to the branding, it tends to stretch the multiple a bit. And then maybe instead of 5 million, you're you're looking at 5.5 million. So that's like a $500,000 addition based upon the $10,000 investment. That's a 50 time ROI. That's where the real ROI comes. But even better, kind of, or even worse, depending on how you look at it, sometimes you're headed toward that $5 million check to exit your business, and in due diligence, the person buying the business discovers, wait a second, you don't own the brand name, uh, and that could be the reason that they walk away from the deal and you never get paid at all. So, so to an extent, the real value comes at exit when you're definitely going to get more for your business. You often significantly more for your business because you own the IP. Um, and on the other hand, it can be the reason why someone walks away from the deal if you don't. Because one thing to recognize about the IP is it builds the bridge, right? It's kind of like if you're operating, let's say, a series of retail locations in a certain city, and someone is buying your business. Basically, they're buying your existing operational business model, where they're saying, okay, you've got these 5 locations. How much money will we make from these 5 locations? Maybe we could expand a little bit in the city to a sixth location. Um, but when you own the IP and they realize they're going to be acquiring the IP, it greatly expands the notion of what's possible once they buy your business. You own the branding that could be the bridge toward them opening up locations in another state, in a and or expanding the brand in other ways. So it's like having the IP gives you leverage, especially for a strategic buyer. So someone who recognizes that, let's say, a competitor of yours, or it could be a supplier or a customer of yours that recognizes that owning your IP can greatly benefit their business, even way beyond the money that you're making in your business. That means your business is worth more than it would be without the IP because there's something that they'd be acquiring that could be worth much more. So like a strategic buyer for a $5 million business might actually see $20 million in value in that business, um, some special synergy, and usually that's going to be because of the IP.
So Scott's in hard money lending, okay? And I do a lot with the infinite banking concept, which has to do with life insurance. Those are two types of businesses. How would we benefit? I mean, is that a possibility? Is there IP there? Is there something that would add value for then um, on the exit we get a more multiple? Or is this simply for restaurants? shoe manufacturers. You know what I'm
product.
saying? I'm trying to understand how applicable this is for all different types of businesses.
Yeah, I mean it's going to vary. For something in finance and in financial services, typically it's mostly about the branding, right? And so like if you're developing or you've developed a brand that has name recognition, that has a reputation associated with it, then trademarks are directly applicable. If it's just like hard money lending that happens because someone knows you and has your cell phone and they call you and they know that you can just work out a deal quickly, then it's not going to have much impact on your business. But to the extent to which you create a brand that people recognize, then it will help. The other thing in financial services is sometimes people create a new kind of like a platform, like a software platform that streamlines the process. And when they do that, then software patents um, can be relevant and can be the asset that then kind of someone acquiring a business says, "Oh, like you've got this proprietary system that you use for shopping around rates or something like that."
So maybe the
Essentially,
customer journey, I mean, is how someone comes in and then their experience from when they first introduced to the company until they decide to go with the company. Am I understanding that?
probably not quite that. That's what we call a business process, and that used to be patentable, but it isn't anymore. So these days it's more about creating a platform, something that involves software. You've got a process where that might be an onboarding process, but it involves your platform where, for example, you get certain information from the client, and that leads to a certain step. It's kind of like a unique onboarding process that's software driven. That could be a patent.
And talking about exits, it's coming back to exits. What would you say are the top three mistakes that entrepreneurs and small business owners make and costing them, if you will, or what's the right word? Shooting themselves in the foot to some degree so their exit isn't as profitable as they had hoped.
One is to not begin planning until they're ready to sell. Like ideally, if you want to maximize the value of your business, you should start planning a few years before the exit. And Kind of the exit planning methodology involves like usually the way in which exit planning advisors start working with businesses is you've got someone who's looking to exit and they say, okay, we want to start the process and like, what's the business worth? And kind of like, what do I need for retirement? And all of that. And they go through that process and they discover some big gaps. First of all, they discover that the business is worth way less than, than, um, than they thought it did, right? They also discover that what they would get paid is way too little for them to retire as they expect to do. So that there's a gap there in terms of their personal readiness for retirement. Um, and usually that changes things to like, okay, well, let's start working on the business. Because once they realize that like, okay, the business would only be worth 3 million today. But if we make changes, if we streamline things, if we kind of capture some of the intangible value within the business through processes and things like that, it could be worth 25 million. So that makes it worth putting off the exit until we can kind of build up that value, which, like I said, is usually a multi-year process. So in some then, they would have been better off planning earlier than they expected to exit rather than now delaying it. So biggest mistake is not planning early. I'd say that's really the number one um, mistake that they make.
Can it, you ever do that too early?
No, and
So
you
planning,
really
I mean, you've heard the
really
old saying
can't.
about, begin with the end in mind. So if you're beginning a business, that you should already be planning your exit
Yeah,
and
exactly.
having in mind where would someone go to learn what types of things really add value? Because I hear you say process, so I can see something that's reproducible, whether that's documentation, software, platform, something that unplug the owner and plug in a new owner, and they can look at the processes and run the business.
Yeah, exactly. And that's like, and that'd be the like the second thing, the mistake they make is having the business not be transferable, right? Is like you exactly as you just said, it's like you want to create a business that a new owner can step into and begin operating. And the types of things that affect the transferability of it can be, well, first of all, it's all the things that people rely on you for within the business, right? It's the way in which like your team is structured, such that it just won't operate without you there. But then there are other issues that affect value. That could be like a customer concentration issue. Turns out that 80% of your business comes from just two customers. That's a big red flag for exit. That's really going to ding value. Sometimes it could be that you've got a bunch of regular customers, but there isn't, they're just on a transactional basis. So like maybe over a period of 6 months, getting those customers into long-term contracts would help solve that issue and greatly increase value. So it's like being able to see those different areas um, where kind of the way in which your business is structured to be not so transferable um, is is kind of part of the big mistake that people make. And yeah, I mean, and essentially, like that's where you want to begin looking at this as early as possible, so that you're not kind of creating bad habits and structuring a business in a way that might be making profit today, but it's not sustainable and it's not transferable. And so there's a phrase within the exit planning world, which is that exit planning strategy is just good business strategy. And it really means that like you have someone like looking at your business to make it more transferable to increase the value of exit. It's just building a better business. And it's just usually looking at some of the blind spots that you as a business owner might not see without a consultant that can look at those with you and say, how do we make this even more solid?
So, when, let's say we've got a new entrepreneur, when would you say they should come and file for a trademark or something like that? Is it right at the go? Or is it, hey, it's about time to sell. Let's now capture and put all the docs together.
Yeah, it's way closer to right on the go. That's for sure. Because if you don't get the trademark, you risk losing the rights to it because someone else can get. If someone else files before you, and maybe even you're happily operating your business for a decade or so, and someone filed the trademark 5 years ago, and like that's going to really cause a problem. And you didn't know because you weren't paying any attention to trademarks. So it really pays to do it at as early a stage as you know you have something valuable. It's like distinguishing from that is like sometimes I have people I'm working with. Let's say I'm working with them on the patent side, and they've got a product that they're planning to launch, and they have a tentative name for it, um, but they're not quite sure. Like I would wait because they're not sure about the name that they're going to use. But at the point at which it becomes valuable to them, meaning that they know this is the name they're going to use, they've invested or they're about to invest into that name. Like they're about to order products with packaging that has the name. Like that's an appropriate time to go through the process. And in comparison to most of the investments that people make at an early stage in the business, it's relatively inexpensive. It's like probably $2,000 or $3,000 to apply for a trademark. Um, and um, and so yeah, it's worth it in really anything but like a just working out of your garage type business.
Got it. Coming back to like valuing businesses, are there like three rules of thumb that you've seen that really either increase the value of the business or that you have to have in order to sell?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that question again?
Sure. Are there rules of thumb that you've seen when selling a business that increase the value right off the go, or that make it so it's insellable if you don't have certain things?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think um, it's kind of like the biggest catch-all is the dotting the I's and crossing the T's um, kind of way of looking at it. Like, are there things there that one would expect to be there? And if they're not there, then that's definitely going to ding the value, right? And um, and the extent to which you reliably have the things in place that really an objective buyer would be looking should be there, that's going to synergistically increase the value because it looks like um, to someone who's considering buying the business, it looks like, well, this is solid. Like these business owners were operating this in the right way, and then they further expect that the rest will be in place without even inspecting all those other areas. They expect, yeah, like where everything's checking out here, it looks great. So yeah, I mean, I think having things be organized um, cleanly, methodically, including the accounting and the finances, um, like having everything in order just kind of leads towards that kind of intangible impression that the business is solid, which will move it up on the multiple scale. Like in any business area, there's a range of multiples that someone might pay for a certain business. Maybe it might be 3 times profit to 7.5 times profit. The 7.5 times profit multiples get paid when the business is what's called best in class, meaning that someone looking at it says, "Well, this is really the best company in the industry that we've ever seen." That's best in class, and they get the highest multiple. So really, it's a matter of having everything together in a way that there's almost nothing that someone can say about it to knock it.
Okay. Well, Rich, this has been a great podcast so far. What for a lot of the viewers, we like to know what's the next mountain that you're climbing. What is that next mountaintop and peak that you're going after?
Yeah, I mean, I would say right now it's about scaling my own business, and so that's been the focus of scaling the business to make it more efficient. Because as I get to some additional levels of revenue and of work in general, there's just some efficiencies that I could capture that I think would make it um, that much more efficient and therefore that much more profitable. So I think that's the big mountain that I'm climbing.
So to kind of tease you a little bit there, you're working on your exit strategy. Is that
Yes.
kind of
Mhm.
what you're saying there, that you're following your
Exactly.
own advice and doing some
Yeah.
things, putting things in place so that you have a better exit?
Exactly, because that makes it because part of what I'm doing to increase it is to make it more scalable. Um, Making it scalable makes it more transferable because it's not about me. And so, yes, like all the things I'm doing are seeking to create efficiencies, to make it transferable, and to kind of have it set up so that others could take over.
That's kind of common to your types of business. I mean, I'm thinking of businesses that's really into the individual specific, like a dental practice or a law firm. It's so much dependent on one person, and you take that person out, it's like, well, where's the business? I've seen that time and time again with dentists. They work hard their whole life and they think, oh yeah, I got this great practice. I'm going to sell it and get multiples and have a great retirement. Well, the reality is they haven't put it together. So that's really cool that you're doing that, that you're actually doing. And that is something that you're a certified exit planning strategist. What is CEP,
CEPA, SEPA.
CEPA, right? And you accepting new clients?
Yes. I
Okay.
mean, I don't typically get involved in the exit planning process itself. See, my orientation towards it has to do with IP. And so I work with clients to increase the value of their business by maximizing their IP. And I do that with all of the kind of SEPA methodology behind me. But when I have a client who wants to get into the process, I've got great referrals for them. I've got people to send them to, depending on what type of industry they're in, that really can help them tremendously.
So you're saying to be okay that we put your contact information in the show notes. People could contact you about IP, trademarks, and
Yes.
specifically registered trademarks, patents, and then also some of the how does that fit into their potential exit strategy?
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And so if they're looking to protect their products or brands, then absolutely contact us, and we'll see kind of where you stand and where you're at with your business, and kind of where the opportunities might be.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you again, Rich, for coming on. This has been great.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
Guys, like Jason said, we will put Rich's contact in the show notes down below. And as always, you can find Jason or I on the show notes down below. If you like this show, make sure to leave us a 5-star review. It really helps us out, and you'd be doing us a big favor. Last, remember that mastering your millions all starts with your mind and your team. Make sure they are the best. We will catch you next time.
Thanks for listening to Master Your Millions with Jason and Scott Henderson. Check the show notes for any links or contact information about today's guest. Make sure to follow the show so you don't miss any future episodes.